My own sister stole from me. Not a stranger, not a friend, my sister. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I'm Ava, a 27-year-old nurse living in Ohio. I've always trusted my younger sister, Mia, like my own reflection. Growing up, we were inseparable. We used to share everything, our clothes, our secrets, and our late-night talks about dreams and the future. I always thought no matter what happened in life, Mia and I would have each other's back. I never imagined that the same person I loved and protected would one day be the reason I lost faith in family. It all started one quiet weekend. I had been saving money for months, working double shifts at the hospital, just to put something aside for a small apartment of my own. Every time I felt too tired or wanted to quit, I reminded myself of that dream, having a place that truly felt mine. I kept my savings in an envelope inside my dresser. It wasn't much, but to me, it was everything I had worked for. That weekend, Mia came over to spend a few days at my place. She had just lost her job and said she needed a break. I welcomed her without hesitation. We watched movies, cooked together, and talked about how things would get better for her soon. She complained a bit about money, saying she wished she could just start over. I told her she would, and I meant it. I didn't know that while I was comforting her, she was already planning to take something from me that I could never replace: my trust. On Sunday morning, I went to take the envelope so I could deposit the money at the bank. I opened the drawer, and my heart dropped. It was gone. I looked everywhere, under the bed, in my bags, even in the trash. Nothing. I tried to convince myself I had misplaced it, but deep down I knew. I remembered Mia had gone out that night while I was working late. She had access to my room. My heart started racing, and I didn't want to believe it, but every sign pointed to her. When I asked her calmly if she had seen it, she smiled like it was nothing and said, "Maybe you spent it and forgot." My stomach twisted. I knew she was lying. I didn't argue. I just stared at her, hoping she'd confess. But she didn't. Later that day, she showed up wearing new shoes and holding a brand new phone. That was my breaking point. I wanted to scream, but no words came out. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the empty drawer. I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. I realized something painful. Money can be earned again, but once trust is gone, it never comes back the same. I didn't cry. I just promised myself one thing. After the money disappeared, I couldn't stop thinking about all the hours I had worked for it. Every long night at the hospital, every time I skipped dinner or turned down a weekend out with friends, it had all been for that dream, my own apartment. I wanted a quiet space, somewhere I didn't have to share with anyone. I had spent months saving, carefully adding every paycheck to that envelope in my drawer. Each dollar meant sacrifice, and each sacrifice had meaning. That money wasn't just cash to me, it was freedom. Mia, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. She always wanted more than she could afford. Even when she didn't have a job, she bought things she didn't need: expensive clothes, makeup, dinners out. When she lost her job a few months ago, I tried to be understanding. I knew how hard it was to start over. I let her stay with me for a while and didn't ask her for anything in return. I cooked for her, helped her fix her resume, and even gave her a bit of cash when she said she needed groceries. I thought I was helping my sister through a rough patch. I didn't know I was making myself an easy target. Mia always had an excuse for everything. If she spent too much, she said she deserved a little fun. If she couldn't pay her bills, she blamed bad luck. I kept telling her to slow down, to save, but she never listened. She lived like there were no consequences. I didn't want to sound like a nagging sister, so I stayed quiet, hoping she would learn on her own. But instead of learning, she was watching me work, save, and trust her completely. There were times when she'd joke about my envelope. Once she said, "You're still old school, keeping cash like that? You should just spend some and enjoy life." I laughed it off then, thinking she was teasing. But now, looking back, it feels different, like a warning I didn't understand. Still, I never locked the drawer. It felt wrong to guard something from my own sister. We had grown up sharing everything, and I didn't want her to think I saw her as a thief. I believed blood meant safety. I was wrong. Mia kept pretending everything was fine. She'd sit on the couch watching TV while I left for work, telling me not to stress so much. "You work too hard, Ava," she'd say. "Relax a little." I'd smile, thinking she cared. In reality, she was planning something that would destroy the little piece I had left. I remember the night before it happened. She hugged me and said, You're the only person who never gives up on me." I smiled, feeling proud to be that person. But the next morning, the envelope was gone. That's when I learned that sometimes betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the ones who use your love as their easiest way in. This was the last time I'd let anyone, even my sister, take my peace away. That Saturday morning started like any other. I woke up early, made myself coffee, and felt proud knowing I was finally going to deposit the money I had worked so hard for. It was over $5,000, months of effort, sweat, and sleepless nights. I even smiled as I got dressed, thinking that soon I'd be one step closer to buying my own place. I remember humming a little tune while walking to my dresser, completely unaware that in a few seconds, my whole world would fall apart. When I opened the drawer, the smile froze on my face. The envelope wasn't there. At first, I thought maybe I had moved it. I checked under some clothes, in my bag, even inside the closet. Nothing. I went through every drawer, every little space in my room. Still nothing. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I knelt on the floor and checked again, whispering to myself, No, this can't be happening." The room looked a little messier than I'd left it, but not enough to think someone had broken in. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no open windows. Everything looked normal, and that made it worse. If no one had broken in, that meant whoever took it had a key, or was already inside. As I stood there, trying to think, I noticed something small but sharp, the faint smell of Mia's perfume. That familiar sweet scent hung in the air, just like it always did when she had been in my room. I froze. My first thought was no, not her. I didn't want to believe it. She had spent the night at a friend's house, or so she said. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, that I was imagining things out of panic. I sat on my bed, holding my head in my hands, trying to breathe. My chest felt tight. I didn't want to think my own sister could take something that meant so much to me. I told myself maybe I misplaced it. Maybe I took it out and forgot. I retraced every step of the past week. The last time I opened the drawer. The last time I counted the money. It had been just 2 days ago. I could see it clearly in my mind, the thick envelope right there under my folded shirts. It didn't just vanish. Part of me wanted to call Mia right away and ask, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. What if she got angry that I was accusing her? What if I was wrong? I felt sick, torn between logic and loyalty. But deep down, something inside me already knew. The silence of the room, the smell of her perfume, the missing envelope, it all added up. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. I sat there for hours, staring at the empty drawer, waiting for the truth to change. But it didn't. By the next morning, I couldn't keep my thoughts to myself anymore. I had spent the whole night staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. Every time I tried to convince myself that Mia couldn't have done it, another memory pushed back. The jokes about my envelope, the perfume in my room, the timing. I felt tired, drained, and numb all at once. When she walked into the kitchen that morning, smiling like nothing had happened, I knew I had to ask. I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was pounding. "Mia, did you see the envelope that was in my drawer?" I asked. She looked up from her phone and gave a small laugh, like it was the funniest thing she had ever heard. "What envelope?" she said, pretending not to know. I explained that it was my savings, that it was gone, and that I couldn't find it anywhere. She shrugged and said, "Maybe you misplaced it. You've been working too much lately." Her tone was light, almost careless, and that hurt more than the words themselves. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But something in her eyes made it hard. There was no concern, no guilt, just a look that said she didn't take me seriously. I decided not to push it further then. I told her it was fine and went to my room, trying to breathe through the ache in my chest. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted her to be honest. Later that afternoon, I saw her again, this time outside the house, laughing with a friend. She was wearing new designer shoes, ones I knew she couldn't afford. In her hand was a brand new iPhone. My stomach dropped. I didn't need proof anymore. The truth was standing right in front of me. I could feel my throat tighten and my hands shake. When she came back inside, I couldn't hold it in. I stood in front of her and asked, "Where did you get the money for all of this?" She smirked and said, "Why? You jealous?" I didn't answer. I just looked her in the eyes and asked quietly, "Did you take my money, Mia?" For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she sighed, rolled her eyes, and said, "Oh, come on, Ava. You'll earn it back. You always do." It felt like something inside me cracked open. Not because of the money, but because of how little it meant to her, how little I seemed to mean to her. She didn't even try to lie properly or apologize. It was just a joke to her. I stood there frozen, trying not to cry, but my throat burned. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. In that moment, I understood something painful. She didn't feel sorry, and she never would. I had always protected her, stood by her, and loved her no matter what. But now I realized she didn't value any of it. That one sentence, "You'll earn it back," kept echoing in my head. She didn't just take my money. She took the last bit of trust one had left in her. Hardest thing to face isn't what happened. It's realizing who did it. After that day, everything between us changed. I stopped talking much, and Mia didn't seem to care. If anything, she got bolder. Instead of feeling guilty, she started showing off the things she bought: new clothes, fancy handbags, and dinners at restaurants she couldn't have afforded before. She'd post pictures with friends, laughing, as if nothing had happened. It was like she wanted me to see how little she cared about what she had done. At first, I kept hoping she would come around, maybe realize how badly she had hurt me. I waited for an apology, even just a hint of remorse. But none ever came. Instead, she acted like I was being dramatic. Whenever I got quiet, she'd roll her eyes and say, "You're still upset about that? It's not a big deal." Her words cut deep, not because they were harsh, but because they were empty. She truly didn't see the damage she had caused. I finally told our mom about what happened, thinking maybe she could talk some sense into her. But when I did, it only made things worse. Mom sighed and said, "Ava, she's your sister. You shouldn't let money come between you two." I tried to explain that it wasn't about the money, it was about trust. But she didn't listen. "Just let it go," she said, like it was something small. That was the moment I realized no one was going to stand up for me. I was on my own in this. It hurt more than I can explain. The person who stole from me was my sister. The person who dismissed my pain was my mother. And here I was, left to carry the weight of both their choices. Every time I saw Mia walk past me with her expensive shoes or new phone, I felt something inside me grow colder. I stopped expecting her to change. I stopped expecting anyone to understand. That night, I sat in my room staring at the empty drawer. The same drawer that once held my dream. It looked so small, but the emptiness inside it felt like the emptiness inside me. I ran my fingers over the smooth wood and tried to remember how it felt to trust her, how it felt to love her without hesitation. That version of me was gone now. I could have cried, but I didn't. The tears had already burned out. What was left was a quiet promise I made to myself. I wouldn't fall apart over this. I wouldn't beg for an apology or try to make her see my pain. Instead, I'd focus on rebuilding myself piece by piece. I looked at the drawer one last time before turning off the light and whispered, "You didn't break me, Mia." It wasn't anger that filled me anymore. It was determination. I knew then that I would rise, not to prove her wrong, but to remind myself that even after that night, I stopped expecting things to go back to normal. Something inside me had changed for good. I still lived in the same house for a while, but I began pulling away slowly, step by step, without making a scene. I didn't want to fight or argue anymore. I was done explaining my pain to people who refused to see it. I realized that sometimes silence is the only answer left when words have lost their meaning. I started packing small things, a few clothes, some books, and my important papers. I moved them quietly into a friend's spare room. She didn't ask too many questions, and I was grateful for that. I told her I just needed a place to breathe, and she understood. I didn't tell Mia anything. Let her think I was still the same old Ava who forgave everything and moved on. I wasn't. At home, I changed my routine. I stopped cooking dinner for both of us. I cooked for myself and ate alone in my room. I stopped leaving my things around the house. I kept my door locked now. Mia noticed the difference, but she didn't seem to care much. She assumed I was still upset and that I'd get over it eventually, like always. But this time was different. I wasn't angry anymore, I was focused. I stopped sharing my plans, my work updates, and my dreams. I used to tell her everything, from my schedule to what I wanted for my future. Now I said nothing. I just smiled politely when she talked, but in my mind, I was already gone. She could think I had forgiven her, but what I was really doing was protecting myself. I had learned the hard way that forgiveness without change only leads to more pain. At work, I threw myself into my job. I started picking up extra shifts again, not because I needed to fill a drawer this time, but because I wanted to rebuild what was taken from me. Every long shift, every tired night felt like a step forward, a step away from the hurt. I started saving again, but I didn't tell a soul. This time, my savings weren't just about money. They were about power, freedom, and taking control of my life again. While Mia spent her days hanging out with friends and pretending everything was fine, I was quietly planning my next move. I didn't want revenge that involved shouting or revenge that would hurt her back. I wanted the kind that would show her exactly what she lost when she betrayed me. Not through anger, through success. I wanted her to see that she hadn't broken me. I wanted her to see that I could rise without her, live without her, and do better without her support. That would be my silent revenge. Not to make her feel pain, but to let her see what real strength looks like when it grows out of betrayal. And I knew deep down that day was coming soon. Betrayal couldn't destroy the strength I was slowly finding within. Months went by, and I kept my distance. I focused on work and nothing else. I stopped wasting energy thinking about what Mia had done. Instead, I used that same pain to push myself forward. Every time I felt tired or unmotivated, I remembered the empty drawer, the perfume smell, and her careless words. "You'll earn it back." Those words became my fuel. I started taking extra shifts again, just like before, but this time it wasn't from desperation. It was determination. I signed up for certification courses, studied late at night, and showed up early to every shift. My coworkers noticed the change, but I didn't share my reasons. I stayed quiet, focused, and patient. Slowly, all that hard work began to pay off. After a few months, my supervisor called me into her office. She told me I was being promoted. A raise, better hours, and more recognition. I smiled and thanked her, but when I walked out of that office, I didn't celebrate. I just took a deep breath and thought, this is just the beginning. I didn't tell Mia anything about it. She didn't deserve to know what I was doing with my life anymore. She still thought I was the same, struggling and trying to get by. I let her think that. I wanted her to. While she spent her days chasing temporary happiness, I was building something permanent, something real. Then one day, I received a letter in the mail. It was my mortgage approval. I had finally been approved to buy my own apartment. My heart felt full. All the long nights, the extra shifts, the quiet sacrifices, they had finally led to something solid. I held the letter in my hand and smiled, not because I had a home, but because I had built it all on my own. I didn't tell Mia until the day I moved out. She saw me packing and looked confused. "Where are you going?" she asked. I told her simply, "I bought a place." She stared at me like she couldn't believe it. Then she tried to act happy, but I could see the jealousy in her eyes. A few weeks later, she showed up at my new place. Her life had started falling apart again. The money was gone, her friends had stopped calling, and she was struggling to pay rent. She stood at my door with that familiar look, the one she used to wear when she wanted something. "Ava," she said softly, "can I stay here for a while? Just until I get back on my feet." For a moment, I looked at her and remembered how it felt when she brushed off my pain like it was nothing. I could still hear her voice saying, "You'll earn it back." So I smiled gently and said, "You'll earn it back, Mia. You always do." Then I closed the door. That moment wasn't about revenge. It was about peace. She finally felt what I had once felt, what it meant to stand outside, wishing for kindness she hadn't given. I didn't gloat or feel proud. I just felt free. My silent revenge wasn't about making her suffer. It was about proving. After I turned her away that day, I thought I would feel guilty. But I didn't. I just felt calm, lighter than I had in a long time. For the first time, I didn't have to protect anyone but myself. I had spent years being the sister who forgave, who helped, who cleaned up other people's messes. That version of me no longer existed. I finally understood that kindness doesn't mean allowing people to keep hurting you. Weeks passed, and I heard little from Mia. At first, I assumed she had found another place to stay. But eventually, the silence broke. One evening, my phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, I thought about ignoring it. But something inside me told me to answer. Her voice was quiet, shaky. She said, "Ava, I need help." I didn't say anything right away. She started crying, explaining how her friends had stopped answering her calls. The people she had partied with, the ones she had spent all her stolen money on, had disappeared the moment she couldn't give them anything. Her landlord was threatening to evict her, and she didn't know where to go. Hearing her cry reminded me of how I had cried months ago, when my drawer was empty and my heart felt broken. For a brief second, I almost felt that old softness return, the part of me that wanted to fix everything. But then I remembered how she had looked me in the eye and laughed when I asked about my money. how she told me I'd earn it back. That memory stayed with me like a quiet reminder of what I had survived. She kept talking, apologizing in bits and pieces between sobs. She said she didn't realize how much she had hurt me until now. She said she finally understood what betrayal felt like. Her own friends had used her, taken advantage of her, and left her alone. I listened quietly. For once, I didn't interrupt or comfort her. I just let her speak. When she finally stopped crying, she whispered, "I don't know what to do." I took a deep breath and said softly, "Now you know how it feels." There was silence on the other end. She didn't argue or defend herself. She just cried again, but this time I didn't feel sorry. I felt peaceful, not happy about her pain, but relieved that life had taught her what I never could. I didn't hang up on her, but I also didn't offer help. I told her, "You'll figure it out, Mia. You always do," and ended the call. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't hate. It was balance, life returning what it owed. After that night, I sat by my window, looking at the quiet city lights. I realized that healing isn't always about forgiving others. Sometimes it's about forgiving yourself for staying too long, for trusting too much. I didn't want her to suffer. I just wanted peace. And now, for the first time, I finally had it. That I didn't need to. My life had already done that for me. After that call, I didn't hear from Mia again for a while. I assumed she needed time to figure things out. And honestly, I needed space too. For years, I had carried the weight of our relationship, forgiving her, fixing things, pretending everything was fine. But now, for the first time, I didn't feel responsible for her anymore. It felt strange at first, but then it started to feel right. I spent my evenings quietly, coming home from work to a peaceful apartment that was truly mine. No arguments, no tension, no pretending. Just calm. I would sit by the window some nights, drinking tea, and think about everything that had happened. The lies, the theft, the tears, the silence. It all played back in my mind like a movie I'd already watched too many times. But instead of pain, what I felt most was understanding. I realized that the worst kind of pain doesn't come from enemies. It comes from people you love, the ones you'd never expect to hurt you. When a stranger betrays you, you move on. But when it's family, it cuts deeper because they know where your heart is. They know how to reach it, and they use that trust against you. That's the kind of pain that changes you completely. But I also learned something more important. Revenge doesn't have to mean getting even. I used to think I needed an apology or some kind of payback to feel better. But watching Mia face the same kind of loneliness she once made me feel, I realized that life has its own way of balancing things. I didn't need to lift a finger. I didn't need to shout, expose her, or make her feel small. The truth did all that for me. Seeing her go through her own struggles gave me a strange kind of closure. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I finally understood that my peace didn't depend on her. The moment I stopped trying to make her understand my pain, I got my power back. I had spent so long waiting for her to care, for her to see me. But I didn't need her validation anymore. I became everything she thought I couldn't be, independent, calm, and strong. Now, when I think about her, I don't feel hate. I just feel distance. I hope she learns from what happened, but even if she doesn't, it's not my burden to carry anymore. Sometimes you heal not by getting answers, but by accepting that you may never get them, and still choosing to move forward anyway. That's what true revenge looks like. Not pain, not anger, not payback, but growth. I became the person she said I couldn't be without her. That was enough. Watching her face. Months later, I decided to visit my old home. It had been a long time since I walked through that front door, and everything felt smaller than I remembered. The air was still the same, carrying faint memories of laughter and arguments, of late-night talks that once meant everything. I stood in the hallway, my heart steady, not heavy like before. When I reached my old room, I paused for a moment. It looked different now, emptier, quieter. The drawer where I once kept my savings was still there, the same one that had started it all. For a second, I thought I'd feel sadness again, maybe anger. But instead, a calm smile spread across my face. I ran my hand across the wooden surface and whispered. I didn't cry. I rebuilt. And I meant every word. That room used to hold so much pain for me, the betrayal, the confusion, the loss of trust. But now it was just a memory, one that no longer had power over me. I realized it was never about the money I lost. It was about the faith I had in people who didn't deserve it. I had lost illusions. The belief that love alone could make people do right, that family would always protect you just because they're family. Those illusions hurt more than the theft itself. As I stood there, I thought about how far I had come. I had built a life that was mine, peaceful, stable, and full of purpose. I had a home that I worked for with my own hands, a career that gave me pride, and a heart that no longer depended on anyone's approval. I wasn't bitter anymore, I was free. Sometimes, peace comes when you stop looking for closure from others and start giving it to yourself. I didn't need Mia's apology, because I already had something better, my strength back. I learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone in again. It can simply mean letting them go without anger. Before leaving, I took one last look at that room. I thought about the girl who once cried herself to sleep there, wondering how she would ever recover. I wanted to tell her she did, that she became stronger, wiser, and more peaceful than she could have imagined. When I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That chapter was closed. I wasn't the same Ava who once begged for honesty or cried over betrayal. I was someone who had turned pain into power and silence into strength. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't payback or proving a point. It's peace, quiet, graceful peace that speaks louder than words. It's success that doesn't need to be shown off. It's walking away without hate and never letting them see you broken again. That's how I won. The reality she created was the only closure I ever needed.